Hey, good afternoon, you guys. So, a few of you have asked me, where is the next video? I'm sorry. I am currently in my last 3 weeks of this semester. So, I'm essentially getting my ass handed to me. And I just have a lot of homework and projects that I'm trying to finish and presentations that I need to prepare for. So, I did have to prioritize some assignments that were due. But it is important to me to make sure that I'm staying on top of things and providing updates. So today I am about 12 weeks along, so that's the end of the first trimester. I'm going to start this video by answering some of the questions that I've gotten since my last video and this one. One of them was, how did I begin the process? And I'm guessing you mean the process of pregnancy. If you mean the process of transition, you can always clarify that in the comments and I can elaborate on that next time. But if you're talking about the process of pregnancy, part of it was intentional and part of it wasn't. So I had started using, or rather stopped using testosterone in May, actually for completely unrelated reasons. I was just having some other health issues and I was going to have to be doing additional hormonal supplements. I was going to have to be injecting testosterone, but then also applying estrogen cream for other reasons. Like basically, I guess we'll just talk about it. When you're on testosterone, the thickness of the vaginal wall, like it deteriorates. So there's three different layers to it. There's the bottom layer, and that like adheres it to the soft muscle tissue, and then there's this middle layer, and that like connects the three layers together, and it also provides like cushion, and it basically creates like the structure and all of like the structural integrity essentially of that tissue. And then you have the top layer. When you're on testosterone, that middle part, which is essential, like withers down to between like 1 and 10% of what it should be. And if you that can just cause a range of health problems that atrophy. So a lot of people, in order to maintain the health of that tissue, have to apply estrogen creams. And I was just like, do I really want to be injecting testosterone and fucking dealing with this estrogen cream? I was like, I don't know. I think maybe. And of course, it was a little bit dysphoria inducing and worrisome because there's a lot of psychological benefit to being on the testosterone. Not only does it maintain certain physical attributes, but there's also that psychological component. You feel good. But I wanted to give it a try for the rest of my bodily health and see if I was okay. If I was actually going to be able to manage that. So about 6 weeks after I made that decision, I had a very light period. Actually, wasn't even sure it was a period at all. I was pretty sure, but it was so light I could not tell. And so then I was expecting my next one, and it was taking a long time for that next period to come. And so, we were a little nervous, me and my partner, thinking, did we accidentally? I mean, I guess it's possible. It's not likely, but it's possible. And so we kind of had that weighing in the back of our mind. And then when the next period came, and it was just my system taking its time getting going again, we realized we were a little disappointed by that. And the more we thought about it, the more we realized that this is actually an advantageous time in our lives in a lot of ways to do that if that's what we wanted to do. So that's how that process began. What was the next question? What did insurance cover? I talked about that a little bit in the week 9 video, so you can always feel free to go back and reference that. But long story short, insurance is covering most of it, except for $800 of out-of-pocket costs. And in the 9-week video, I detail more specifically what those costs are. So if you're curious and you want to know more, you can go ahead and check that out. So I had 2 12-week appointments today. I had one at the hospital because I have more sophisticated ultrasound equipment, and I was getting a screening done because they do a screening at 20 weeks as well. But they do the first one at 12, and essentially they're looking for chromosomal defects. So they're looking for trisomy 21 Down syndrome, trisomy 18, and trisomy 13. A lot of people know about trisomy 18 and 13 because they're really rare. They're also really fatal. And you're also screening for any other major birth defects that might might make you choose to make different decisions about whether or not you would continue to carry the pregnancy all the way through. You know, if you knew that the likelihood of you having a viable baby at the end of that process was slim to none. So that's kind of what they're looking for. And I mean, it's not diagnostic. I can't tell you anything for, 100% certainty. And it's only 91% accurate or inclusive. So there's always that chance that your baby could have trisomy 21, 18, or 13, and the screening's not going to detect it. And part of that has to do with the size of the fetus, which is why they do another one at 20 weeks when they're able to really go in there and see all of those internal organs that are just still so small right now. By the way, the fetal fruit for this week is a lime. It's a lime-sized person now. So yeah, that's the screening, and that is why they do that. It's in two parts. There's a blood test, and I thought they were going to do a blood draw, but they actually just pricked the tip of my finger, and they squeezed 5 samples out onto these little paper swabs, and those get tested. So I'll find out next week what the results of those were, but I'm not very concerned because the ultrasound screening went really, really well. There's like 3 things they look for. They look for how much fluid is in this deposit on the back of the neck that fetuses have at this time in their development, and a thicker sac of this fluid doesn't necessarily mean that you have a baby with a chromosomal defect, but typically you do see that characteristic correlated with a much higher likelihood of that happening. So they look at that. They also look at the bridge of the nose to see how developed it is, because fetuses that might be likely affected by that at this time in their development have little to no nasal bone structure there. We didn't have that issue either. There was a lot of calcification and development there. So, and then there was another thing too. I think they were looking at like the length of the baby and a few other things. Those were the only, I mean, I knew that she was looking for a handful of things, but she only really went into detail and described those 2 elements. The ultrasound technician was really great, actually. She answered our questions. She was super friendly. She was super nice. And as usual, I felt my typical anxiety about walking into the clinical setting, like space, because it's pretty much all pregnant women there. And there were more people this time than when I went to the Associated Physicians, and I wasn't there. I was at a larger hospital this time, one of the big downtown ones. So anyway, the people there, like the secretary and the nurse and the genetic specialist and the ultrasound technician, they were all really great. They didn't like bat an eye. And I know that there's a message at the very top of my medical profile right now that says that I'm trans, so that people aren't surprised when I walk into those spaces that are typically just for people who are presenting and identifying as women. But there were some other patients, like there was a little bit of side eye. I definitely noticed some side eye moments. Especially when we were in between the ultrasounds and the genetic screening. There was a couple, and the woman just kept like looking up from her cell phone and looking at me and looking down and up and down and up and down. And I'm sure she thought it was strange. And I was sitting there because we'd already had the ultrasound and they'd printed off the pictures, and I was sitting there going through them, and she was just like, "What is this?" But it was just kind of amusing. But there was that element. And it was great to see the baby. It was a really, really impressive machine. Like, way better than even 5 years ago when I had my first child. The resolution was just incredible. We could really see all the baby in there from all of these different angles, and you could see the individual fingers, and you could see the arms moving, and you could see the bones inside of the arms. It was crazy. It was really cool. Baby's way more developed now. I mean, it really does look like a little person in there. The first ultrasound we had, it was very, very zygote. Like, it just basically, just like kind of like a snowman, but only with 2 segments and sad little bud arms. Very very new and underdeveloped yet, and it really has like arms and legs and fingers and toes now, and you could even I start identifying like the features in the face. That was really cool. And then I also had an appointment with my midwife, Mary, today. It was actually part 2 of our 12-week appointment. The first one lasted for 2 hours, and that was last Thursday. Yes, it was last Thursday. And then today we had another hour-long session, so 3 hours, which isn't, typically the first few appointments, there is a lot of talking and there's a lot of medical history that gets taken and there's a lot of general information, and Mary just goes above and beyond. So, I mean, we talked about all kinds of things. We talked about diet and nutrition and exercise and chemical agents that are in the atmosphere and different like essential oils and herbs that have that are estrogenic and have chemical effects on your endocrine system. Just like the depths that she goes into. I mean, you would never get this level of comprehensive care in a hospital setting. You just wouldn't. They don't have time for that, and they're most of the time they don't have the wealth of experience and diversity of knowledge that she has. So I mean, I'm just blown the fuck away every time I have a meeting with this midwife, how much I take away from it and how much more connected I feel, to the experience that I'm having, and how much more responsible and proactive. I mean, Mary just always gives you so much to think about. And I just think that's really, really valuable. I think that it's also still important to keep in mind that pregnancy is work. There are tasks involved, there are responsibilities. So I think that that's everything that I wanted to talk to you about this time. As always, you are free to ask questions. Occasionally there are shitty things that trolls post on these videos, and I try to stay super on top of deleting it right away because I want these spaces to feel safe. So if anyone is ever looking at these videos before I've gotten a chance to delete them, I just want to apologize because that's not the experience that I'm wanting for you. And I'm doing my best to protect you from it. But I just wanted to extend that if any of you have come to a video and seen that and been affected by it, because you don't deserve to read things like that. And it's just stupid people living their lame little lives. I mean, it really doesn't have anything to do with you anyways. You're all wonderful, and thank you for your interest in this journey, and for participating and bringing attention to content that needs to be out there. Because again, transgender and gender nonconforming pregnancies are not rare by any means. They're extremely common. The problem is the massive erasure of this community and the content that we create in our culture. The problem is that we aren't given platforms to talk about it. And people want to spread misinformation that's more interesting. It's much more fun to talk about trans men like they're unicorns than to talk about it like it's something common, that maybe we should consider the way we talk about and think about like spaces for pregnancy and discussions around pregnancy and language around pregnancy that, makes people uncomfortable to start to have to change things like that. So it's much easier to leave things shrieked. Not sure what I was going for there. We'll say clouded in mystery, obscure these things when they're pretty cut and dry in all reality. Oh, well, I blathered a little bit more there, but now I think I've said everything that I wanted to say. I will see you at 13 weeks, and thank you for being patient with me while I finish out my hellacious semester.